Wuthering Waves is a free-to-play action-adventure gacha with an emphasis on its exploration. This game is actually surprisingly playable as a single-player experience. It doesn't find itself bogged down with pay-to-win elements to complete the main story that is currently available. Don't get me wrong, they are present, but they aren't necessary to get through the main story that is currently being presented. Speaking of which, I would say the story is unfortunately one of the more muted elements of the game. You play as, tell me if you've heard this one before, a hero with amnesia who may or may not be an ancient legendary hero and a child of prophecy meant to save the world. Spoiler alert, you're the main character. Of course you are. I think overall the story is serviceable, but nothing that's going to stick with you in the long term. I think the only real interesting elements come from your interactions directly with a high-ranking member of one of the enemy factions, and the very last portion of the story, which is a fight across a battlefield, starting with almost all the available characters that you can pull through the gacha system making an appearance. As the battle progresses, more members start splitting off to kind of give you room to make that final push towards the final boss. And coincidentally, I'm playing Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm right now, so it definitely reminds me of the Sasuke retrieval arc, and that's a cool vibe to have just for any game or story, really. I think it's just a great device because it's, you know, something that does kind of build this idea of importance in the task, but also like integrity in the characters themselves for that kind of heroic sacrifice, whether or not it is the ultimate sacrifice, you know what I mean? So while that's some pretty good praise, outside of that, it honestly feels like a bunch of nothing, at least for the most part. Like I said, there are those kind of little elements of intrigue, and even so, even though it doesn't feel like much, the payoff that you get from this ending does make it worth it, in my opinion. I just feel like this is a very cool ending sequence for the story that they currently have. I know this is an odd criticism for a game like this, or any RPG, but this game I feel like is just a little too dialogue heavy. I know, it's an RPG, it's gonna have that. I'm used to that, and for the most part, I'm okay with it, and typically like it, but I just feel like there's not a lot of substance in what's being said, or maybe it's just that I've never been hooked in with this story, so the more dialogue you pile on, while it might be trying to add something onto the world, I'm just not there yet in terms of caring, so it just doesn't do a lot for me. It just feels overwhelming to me, where I'm just like, okay, can we get done with this? And I mean, speaking of which, the talking itself is also a bit of an issue for me. Most of the dialogue is just text that we read through, but for what we do have voice acting wise, for the English, it's not the greatest in my opinion. Some of it can hit kind of an old anime dub nostalgia button for me, but eventually I just ended up switching the audio over to Japanese, and it feels more at home. I would like to throw in that when this game does have proper cutscenes, I find them to be quite good looking, especially during the companion quests, so that's definitely a plus. I guess after the story, we should dive into the core of this game, and that is, of course, the gameplay. Just to get it out of the way, the gacha is a pretty standard affair from what I've seen. You get special items to exchange for characters and weapons in the shop. This time the menu for this is called the Convene menu. You draw from here using different items depending on which ticket category you're drawing from. There's also a store where you can either exchange other in-game currencies to get more items to draw, or of course, the traditional use of real money to get more of these items. I think there's about 13 characters called resonators in this game, and honestly, I think I got really lucky and drew Kelchero near the start. I don't remember seeing him in the story yet, but this guy rocks, and honestly just feels like the strongest character to me, and that's actually playing and using him in my party. He just always seems to dish out the most damage and does it in the quickest amount of time as well. He has this suit and design that feels very Metal Gear, at least up top, and just has a ton of Virgil-esque moves. Virgil from Devil May Cry, of course. I thought playing the main character that he had some Virgil stuff going on, but no way. This is the Virgil for the game. Also, just a side note, but the main character's design is so much more boring for the male character. The female just has a lot more going on with it and just is overall more interesting, at least in my opinion. I feel like that's very common, but yeah, the main character, I guess it is just so you can try to paint yourself on him, but it's a pretty boring design in my opinion. Back to the game. Each resonator has a different element associated with them, which honestly I don't notice the effect of too much unless you run into an enemy that is immune to your damage type, but for the most part it just kind of seems like the damage is always doing the same. Maybe I'm just not paying attention, but yeah, it's never been something where I thought taking elements into account was a really obvious way to get through a fight faster. Each character also has a weapon type that you'll be looting for over and over again to try to get better variations. Hence there is a weapon gacha pool where you can try to get the probably current best versions of each weapon. You can level up your characters through experience items, but you will reach frequent level caps in my opinion. It comes up pretty quick, and they need to be broken by 1, being the appropriate union level, and 2, having the appropriate ascension items for each character. Your union level is like your world level in a sense. You gain Union XP by exploring, doing quests, solving puzzles, and doing various challenges. Getting to certain Union levels allows you to ascend your characters as previously stated, but it's also necessary for you to continue the main story, with mainline quests being locked behind a certain Union level. Each character has a traditional skill tree that can be leveled up, focusing on each of your methods of dealing damage. Of course, you need the appropriate items to level these up, and the materials that you need get more rare as you get higher in level. You can also unlock further buffs by using wave bands, an item that you'll get for drawing duplicate characters in the gacha. You'll also find these through certain quests in the case of the MC, as you will not be pulling them from the gacha, of course. There's also the Echo system, which is your Shin Megami Tensei or Pokemon style monster collection system. You can equip multiple echoes to your character and receive various buffs. The main echo slot is pretty awesome because you can actually transform into the echo that you have slotted in there temporarily in battle and use their main skill. Also, some of the echoes remind me of the Void set from a Remnant. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I wanted to throw that in there. Outside of combat, you have plenty of ways to explore. You can climb, wall run, and make use of various different tools to travel, such as a glider and a grapple hook. I think this approach to the world is what hammers in a lot of the opinions of it being a Breath of the Wild or Genshin kind of clone. Granted, I'm a gacha newbie, so I've never played Genshin, so I don't know how much this game is actually like that one, but it seems to be pretty explicit in trying to share the same gaming space. Throughout the game, you will find fun puzzles and challenges to participate in, and honestly, I think most of them are a lot of fun. Whether it's a simple hacking minigame or trying to highlight all of the tiles you see, I think there's plenty of fun in these, and the variety you get, even if they are mostly simple, is a great thing for the game. I feel like an idiot, but I didn't notice that. One of my first times doing a tile puzzle, I ended up spending so much time trying to brute force it with pieces in their default position. Does not work, did not work out. Remember, you can rotate these and save yourself a lot of time and headache. Then they become very simple, but when you're trying to figure them out that way, yeah, you can get a little lost. Also, these puzzles are why I decided to keep a gun user in my main lineup. I found so many shooting challenges in the open world, I got tired of switching between my main party and a pre-made one that had a shooter in it. I just caved and went, okay, you're in the main lineup now. So I don't even really pull them out in combat. I let the other 2 members of my party put in the work there. Oh, they even had some 2D sections that I thought were really interesting additions to change up the formula, though they are pretty rare. And honestly, I think that's best for the game overall. Not that these aren't good or fun in any way, I just think that keeping them a little more limited does make them a little more special and much more enjoyable as a break to the formula. I think the way menus unlock is actually really weird in this game. Most of them unlock based on your union level, so I don't think I had access to dailies, events, or even the gacha pool itself until my second day of play. Co-op didn't unlock until I believe union level 22, which is right around the time I finished the main story. It seems just like a very strange approach to me. You can't play with other people until you're deep into the game, as it currently stands at least. And you even need a little bit of investment before you can throw money at the game, which is probably a good thing for, players in the community overall, but it's just really weird for this type of game because I feel like anyone who's going to play it knows that element's going to be there, so I don't really get the point in delaying it, I guess. And also, where it stands now, I feel like co-op only unlocked basically when I was done with the game, so maybe that's kind of intentional so that you can help each other out with just post-game stuff, but honestly, I feel like it's just a missed opportunity, really. Overall, I think this feels like a pretty complete experience with obvious room to grow. Even though this portion of the story concludes with us resolving something that feels pretty major in this world, there's plenty of plot threads that were created and haven't been resolved that we could clearly pursue in the future. The big question on something like that is it worth sticking around for? I think that's the real question, and it really relies on your enjoyment of this gameplay loop. I don't think this story is interesting enough to be the driving force behind coming back. I think that's a shame because the setting is fairly interesting with us exploring the old world tech that still remains. We're finding creatures out here that are fused with cars and traffic lights and, just kind of these demon portals in general. I think those are things that intrigue me, but I don't feel like the narrative expands upon or explores it in a way that I found super engaging, so I'm not hooked. I think overall I am glad that I played this, and like I said, I felt like the ending sequence was pretty satisfying and made it worth it. I didn't put any money into this, so I definitely feel like it was worth my time, and I think that's a great statement in its own that you're able to complete the story without needing to drop a cent. It took me about 3 days of on and off play to complete the main story, and the union level requirement did have a lot to do with that. I'll admit, I feel like I probably could have gotten through a lot faster, but I think the union level is also in place to make sure that you're scaled to the right level for what you're about to get into. So it does make some sense. Even with the loose ends that are in the story, I feel like this was a complete enough experience for me that I don't really know if I'm craving to come back and play anymore. I'll probably play a few more days just to get login rewards, but I think eventually I'll fall off fully and just kind of not have a lot of interests, and I don't know if I would even get back in when a new season started with a new chapter. It could just be a me thing because I haven't found a gacha that's locked me in yet. Honestly, I haven't found many games like that as I bounce off of MMOs in a similar way. Just any game that wants you to log in day after day never really was my cup of tea, I guess. This game also doesn't have the benefit of being tied to something I care about already because, look at my Devil May Cry Peak of Combat review. I was trying my hardest to justify that game because it's associated with something I love. And honestly, I'm a little embarrassed of that video now because the game in fact is not very good, and I was just trying to make it as good as can be to justify the treatment of the Devil May Cry brand, I guess. But honestly, that game would have been leagues better if, not necessarily an open world like this, but if it was structured more like this game. The combat here feels better than it does there, and that doesn't seem right for a Devil May Cry game, but I just think that there's just so much that these games could learn from each other. Anyway, I'm getting off topic and beating an unrelated dead horse. I am feeling pretty good about Wuthering Waves as a experience, but I'm not thinking that I'll be committing much more time to it. What do you guys think? Have you enjoyed your time with the game so far? Do you like the story? Do you see yourself sticking around or at least coming back for big updates? I would love to know, and if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.